phone is on Sirius XM Big 12 network. It was right the last 3 plays on offense for Baylor. They were replaying their broadcast, and Lynn goes, "Why are you listening to this?" He said, "You know what? I know how we called it. I want to hear how they called it." They didn't disappoint me. I mean, John Morris sounded like he wanted to jump out the window. He was so excited.
I sent him a text afterwards. So sorry.
I did.
I said, sorry I missed you, and you're welcome.
That was definitely a gimmick. Okay. Now, 3 o'clock Saturday in Kilgore. And you know in Kilgore for the playoff championship. All right. Go by, is it Bison or Bison?
Bison. And check midnight got to know it, and I saw it.
Really?
I drove here, but then I just came here instead of going to the court.
That's what I was going to say. At least you had another reason to be
So where do you think I'd rather be on
more
Saturday?
inconvenient if not if you drove all the way.
Norman or Kilgore, Texas?
That's what it said on the like the motion, because one of the documents was available on.
Yeah.
Said it too because of the conflict with the defendant's counsel.
Yeah, because that's where I was confused, is because it had that, but then like I said, the attorney that I asked when I was there, he was like, yeah, they moved it, because it's been moved from felony to misdemeanor, but I didn't know if that was the reasoning, because like I was telling you, and technically the charges were even involved yet, I don't think so they have the court date. But I don't know, I just want to double check, I'm like,
I think the judge changed.
Hey, Scott.
So that might also be part of it.
You and Coop,
maybe so, wait, what?
who are your papers sending to Kilgore on Saturday? Who are your papers sending to Kilgore?
I'll have to get back to you.
There's an Oklahoma team playing for a conference championship.
Yeah, I think she was the original. And now it's like converged, I think, right?
Yes, that's the name I
So maybe
saw.
that's also part of why it's
Maybe so. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because I'm like, I don't want to give any wrong information or anything about that.
Seriously, I hadn't fed her today. Is that a cookie? She'll eat that sucker before you even turn around. Well, you might have a chance. It's in a plastic bag. She'll eat the plastic if she could smell it. So, y'all ready? What do y'all think about my shirt? It's pretty nice, isn't it? I was just noticing it now when I was fixing my hair a little bit ago. You like that shirt? It's a pretty nice shirt. I don't know where I got it, but I just noticed it looked pretty nice. Okay, so you guys, why don't you start on questions and we'll go from there. I mean, I don't think there's any secrets. We all know who we're playing, and you know them, you know us. Fire away.
How big of a challenge is Kyler Murray? I mean, I know you guys have had your struggles with Charlie Brewer when things broke down. He took off running. Murray is a little bit more designed run, I guess, than that. But
yeah, he's really good. We all know that. You know, I could stand up here and talk about what he's done, but you know, the basis of defense in football is everybody has a gap responsibility. Everybody has his own coverage or man coverage. The one player you can't or have a hard time accounting for is the quarterback. And the difference between what he presents versus what they had the last few years is it is not a potential 8 or 10 yard run. He might go 60 yards and score. And he's been really good player. And that's really, you could talk about it all day, but that's what he gives you. I mean, you're going to have to try to rally to defend everything, and then you got to take care of him secondary. And when you are trying to defend a player that's that active, it's not always easy, which has been evident if you watched their games this year.
Mike, your defense against Texas was pretty good, and you wanted to take their receivers out of it. You limited them. It also looked like somebody was spying Ellinger in that game. Can you spy Kyler? Or is he so good that even a spy is kind of ineffective against him because spy gets caught up in traffic and it's over?
I'm not saying that it's not a good plan to do it. I'm not saying people haven't tried it. I haven't seen it work very good for them. If you were to spy him, it would have to be of somebody that's really fast, because he runs pretty good. So there have been attempts. There have been sometimes it's been successful, but you remember now, if you spy him, then you're giving up something somewhere else. So you got to really have a good plan and a good reason for it, would be my guess. I meet with all those guys later in the afternoon, and I would know a lot more then, but I would just say it would be a choice based on what you think your concept is and your best opportunity at that particular time.
One more thing out of the Baylor game. And I know your background. I know who your coaches were going through, football. I know you can't stand lack of discipline. How did you address that with your guys? Because I know that was probably way overboard what you're willing to put up with on Saturday.
Well, we've had that issue the majority of the year. We've had more face masks, more late hits, more 15-yard penalties, more chop blocks than I've had in years, I would guess. I mean, I may be off a little bit there. I didn't actually do the numbers to specifics, but what I did was I was really honest with them, because that's usually what I do, because it works better. I said, with approximately 8 minutes to go in the game, you played on the road, you were ahead 10 points, you already had 100 yards in penalties, and the coaches messed up and gave him a block punt for a touchdown. You were still ahead 10 points. And then you ended up with 130-something yards in penalties, and we ended up losing the game. 2 weeks ago, you beat a good Texas team, and you left 6 points on the board, and you played reasonably sound in those areas. But the point being is you still were ahead by 10 points with 8 minutes after 100 yards of penalties and multiple drives being extended by things that we could have avoided. And we're not a good enough team to do that, to get away with that. And so that's what I told them. And that we would continue to coach it. It has been talked about. It has been preached. I'm going to say literally over 100 times that I've said it during the last 3 months. Smart, disciplined football. Pull off, no late hits, be in good position. Sometimes you're going to get a face mask like the one against Enoch, I don't know, whenever that was, a while back. I mean, the guy was down and the kid moved and his hand caught it. Sometimes that's going to happen if you're playing aggressive. We had a late hit on a quarterback against, I don't know, maybe Iowa State or Tech, I can't remember, where Bunnage was fighting to get to him and he hit him down low. He didn't mean to hit him low. He's trying to get to the quarterback. They flagged him based on the rule. I don't have a problem with that. Trey Carter went to the quarterback's face late for no reason and extended a drive. They're going to have to punt off their own 18-yard line. I got a problem with that. So there's a point where coaches coach and there's accountability, and players have to play and there's accountability. And then I'm in charge of all of it. So basically what you said keeps me from sleeping at night. If I lose a game and I get beat, I'm good. That's part of life. But if I give a game away, in my opinion, when I don't play the way I should or don't play smart football, I got a problem with that. I'm not taking anything away from Matt and what Baylor's done. He's done a great job with them just in 1 year of resurging, and they're fundamentally sound and all that. I'm just telling you the way I feel. So that's what I told the team. I told the coaches. We got to do a better job, right? The illustration Saturday tells us we're not doing a good enough job of coaching discipline and structure. Now, there's different ways to do that. Some people spank their kids. Some people put them in timeout. Some people ground them. Some people take their phone. There's different ways to handle that. And so we will address those issues. But we certainly can't play good football and have a chance to be successful when the clock expires with all those different situations that happened on Saturday.
You mentioned just now, taking a phone away. What ways can you penalize players for committing penalties?
Well, it's real simple, right? You take them out of the game. You don't put them back in.
Is that what you're going to have to start doing, you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's give and take, right? You got kids yet?
No.
Okay, so whenever you get kids and they get to a certain age, I've gone through this. Okay, I'm going to punish you and you're not driving your car for 2 weeks. Well, you're pretty much miserable for 2 weeks because he can be begging you for a ride. But you got to do it if you want to try to enforce any discipline. It's no different with these guys. So if your best guys are on the field that give you the best chance to win, and they're not playing smart football and we're not getting any results. See, I've been fortunate for 14 years. I really haven't been faced with this. We haven't really had to deal with it, but it is now. So at some point you got to say, okay, listen, if you're going to be selfish because you're taking away from the other 10 guys, then you're going to have to come over here and stand by us. And then we have to put a guy in that may be less experienced or maybe not as athletic. So you really hurt the whole team. But I don't know what other options we're faced with at this particular time, because what I've been doing is not working. That's just the way it is. I've been wrong before. So
What role, Mike, you talk about the coaches and the accountability of the players. What role do the teammates play in that?
You know, John, it's interesting. See, the thing that I worry about as a head coach, and I don't worry about a lot, but one thing is that I talk too much to them. Because at some point, if you're always on somebody, like raising kids, at some point they just quit listening to you. Or if you don't approach it the right way, if you don't teach and coach and parent and you're yelling all the time, they give up. Okay, they're not, kids nowadays aren't tough like we were when we were growing up. They're different. So there comes a time where you have to have just real accountability. And I mean, I feel good about our football teams practicing. They practiced great last night. Their enthusiasm level was really good. They practiced good last week. So the things that have to happen is that we have to start making changes in those situations, because you have two kind of goals in an organization, a corporation. You got short-term and long-term. And you have to make short-term decisions, but they have to benefit the long-term of the organization, which is this team, or they're not going to be beneficial. Short-term decisions usually aren't very good. And we have tried to make some short-term, not me, because I usually make those decisions, and it's not worked out. So I'm going to start looking into making long-term decisions. And hopefully the leaders on the team, and I'm going to get back to your original question, those guys have to say, look, that's not going to happen anymore. Coach Gundy's told you that over 100 times this year. I'm telling you now, we're not doing that. That's what has to happen. In the old days, they handled it, you know, what was that movie with Jack Nicholson? What was it? You know, the military one. You need me on that wall. Yeah. Yeah. What was that called?
Few good men.
No, I know what they did to him.
Code Red.
Code Red. I'm not saying there was that type of abuse, but there was Code Reds basically means somebody, Emmanuel Ogbaugh, he made sure that didn't happen again. It didn't have to be me. And the peers are way more powerful than the coaches.
When you say short-term versus long-term decisions, is that essentially what you were getting at with Nathan, take a guy out of the game versus
Nathan.
when you were talking to him? Short-term.
I thought I had a player named Nathan. I was like, who the hell is Nathan? Well, I'm just giving you options. I haven't made any decisions, okay? But what I did is I explained to the staff that 2 weeks ago, our illustration, or how many weeks ago at Kansas State, wasn't very good. We didn't play very good. Against Texas, they drew us a good picture. Well, at Baylor, everything we did was pretty good. We need to be a little better against the rush. And if you didn't extend so many drives defensively, you'd have been a lot happier, because the yards would have been considerably less and probably the points. But it didn't work that way. So now the illustration they gave us is we're not a disciplined football team. The coaches messed up on the punt. That wasn't the players. That was our fault. So we have to be a more disciplined football team, and the decisions that we have to make from here on out have to be so that if I don't come in at curfew, that I'm not losing my truck for 2 weeks, I'm losing my truck for 2 months. Do I want to lose my truck for 2 months and stay out after curfew? Well, that's your choice. That's what has to happen. I'm trying to give you the best illustration. But I will say this, I don't have all the answers, because people ask me all the time. If I did, I'd already done it. I would have already put it into effect. Some of it's youth, some of it's immaturity, some of it's when they get frustrated. Some of it's maybe they're getting a little fatigued, being out of position and reaching and grabbing, different things like that. So there is no easy answer, but we'll come up with one.
You mentioned the players being an important voice in terms of policing themselves. Mm-hmm. Does a picture that they painted Saturday make you concerned at all that they tuned out the conversations about discipline?
Oh, no, they didn't tune it out. I don't think we're to that point. That's what I was saying with John. I don't see that at all with this team. I don't see lack of efforts. I don't see frustration that's created animosity on the team. I don't see any of that. And I have seen it before, but I don't see any of that. I don't think they're tuning us out. We're just not getting results. So the penalty has to be a little more strenuous, and maybe we can get some results.
What other options or reasons are you seeing for some inconsistencies from game to game, and sometimes within games where you have really great stretches and stretches that aren't so good?
I'm all in on you. I got the question last night I get it, as soon as I walk in the door, I get it from both boys. And seriously, I'm not joking. It's bang, 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 this. And then last night, about right before 10 o'clock, it was, how can you play like you did against Texas and then play like you did against Baylor? I said the same reason I tell you guys, if you see trash in the house, to take it out, and I walk by and you don't do it. And I've told you 10 times. How can you not take the trash out when I told you for 2 years, if you walk by the door and there's a bag of trash, take the trash out. And you and your brother walk by it and step over it to get out the door. How does that happen? I said, how does it happen that I tell you to pick your stuff up off the bathroom floor, and every once in a while I go up there and check, and you have clothes and towels in the bathroom floor? I've been telling you for 6 years since we lived in this house. Pick your stuff up. It's upstairs. Put your stuff down the hamper. How does that happen? I said, the other one, I said, you missed studying for a math tutor, a math quiz, and got a bad grade. And all we've done is tell you is your homework, do this, do this. How does that happen? I said, well, that's how that happened to Baylor. And if I knew the answer, I'd fix it, but I'm just giving you an example.
Mike, you took Darian Daniels, or had Darian Daniels down there, and obviously he's a great leader. I mean, I get a chance to see his impact on the players. Are you seeing some of your younger players start developing too?
Yeah.
I'll bring up one in particular. Kylan Wallace seems to have come a long way, not only as a player, but as a leader.
They're doing good. The overall number of guys like that on this team has been down. I said that from day one. You lose a lot of guys, and some guys are trying to find themselves, and so you don't just step up and lead. You have to have some things that go into that. Darian is good for us. He was leading our defense before he got hurt, because he's experienced, he's a good player, he's vocal, he backs up what he says. See, it's hard to lead when you don't do what you say you're going to do, or you're telling them to do something and you don't do it. It's hard to lead. He's done a good job, and I think he might want to get into coaching later. So we normally don't do that, Robert, but we need him now, and he's good. He knows what's going on. He can talk to those guys, can calm them down, and that's why we have him there. And Tylen's doing good too, but Tylen's young, right? He's played last year. How many plays did he play? 50 something? How many did he play? Okay, so that's not even one game. Well, he's only played 9 games in his life. So it's hard for him to step up and be that guy. But he's going to. He will be at this time next year.
Mike, as you approach this week, do you your emotions change? And if they do, how do they change?
You talking about because of the Bedlam game? Yeah, it's a special week for everybody. It always has been. I mean, I don't need to get into all that. It's a big game. We don't have pro football. Everybody wears orange or red this week and goes on, and it's a big game. I think that works to our benefit. I mean, I know they'll be fired up too, but if you're sitting here at 8-1 or 9-0, then it takes care of itself. The question came up last week. You had Texas, you had primetime TV. Now you're going to Baylor. You're playing on the road. You play at 11 a.m. How do you get them ready? Well, that's why you start from the beginning and say, listen, if we're going to play somewhere and both teams are undefeated, and we're playing for a berth in the conference championship game, and there's 100,000 people there, this is how you play. Well, you do the same thing if you're playing in a sandlot and nobody's watching. If you make the commitment and this is what you buy into. Now, people will look at me, oh, hey, it's making fun of me. It is what it is. That's what we tell them. And if you don't feel that way, then you shouldn't have signed up for what we do. Because in life, it's not going to be that way. The most productive things you have to do in life are when people aren't watching. That's the hardest part. And so that's what they've been told. But they'll be excited to play in this game. They're going to prepare, they're going to work their butt off, and they're going to play hard.
I was asking about you.
I'm the same. Not really. I mean, I try to find a nice shirt to wear today for y'all. But, I mean, it doesn't really change for me. I can't change. I can't be on an emotional roller coaster. I just can't. It's too hard. It's a long season, and I have to stay even keel the best I can. I try to coach the coaches and let the coaches coach the players. I mean, that's just kind of been my philosophy.
kind of just touched on it. Does the ability to play spoiler serve as motivation at all, you think, for those guys?
I mean, maybe. I don't know what motivates different young men, but I think the most important thing is control what you can control, okay? So we all have things we do in life that we can control, and then other things are out of our hands. So their preparation and the commitment and the effort and the film study and the things they do to get ready to go play in this game, we don't have anything to do with what Oklahoma's doing right now. I don't have anything to do with what Kyler Murray does this week, or Lincoln, or the guy that they let coach running backs or wideouts, whatever he coaches. All I know is this: we can only control what we do here, okay? And that's the way we approach it each week. And if you have to do things, I know people don't really believe in this. Put yourself in my situation, okay? They guarantee you 12 games a year, and you're wanting to motivate your team in the locker room, get them to go out there, get them to play hard, or the best Root Konechny speech you got, and go out there and win one for the Gipper. Well, what are you going to do next week?
Have to give the same speech.
Or a better one. What are you going to do the next week? You got 12 of them. Okay? So here's the point. They have to motivate themselves. They have to buy into the culture of the system to do it. Now, people say, well, let's go back to Texas. You played prime time, 7 o'clock. The blonde-headed guy was calling the game, whatever his name is. Texas is ranked in the top 10. All those things are going on. They're going to be motivated. You can tell them that and get them going. Okay? Well, the next week you go play somewhere, and it's 11 a.m., and it may not be the same picture. So what are you going to tell them that week? Now, that's why the system, they have to buy into it themselves. They have to do it for themselves. They have to do it for each other. The team has to be important to them. That goes back to what Robert said and what John asked and somebody else asked. That's why there has to be self-discipline among the team to police undisciplined football. And that's why it all ties in together. It's a big picture. But it's a good question. But that's the way I see it, because one thing about young people nowadays, they're soft. They're not as tough as they used to be, but they know what's going on. You can't trick them like we used to be able to trick them. They got everything going on. They know what's happening. So.
Yeah, that was my crappy question about letting the blonde-headed guy motivate them for Texas.
Well, no. I mean, that's why I don't even bring any of those. It's got nothing to do with it. I mean, if you don't want to go play in a game and play hard, you only get 12 a year. This is not baseball where you get 60 games, or it's not basketball where you get 35 games. You pay a price to play a violent sport 12 times a year. And if you don't want to go play hard, and then if you do good enough, they guarantee you another one, or maybe a couple more based on 4 teams in the country. If you don't want to play hard, I don't know what to tell you. You probably should do something else.
How do you feel like Taylor played Saturday after watching it?
Played good. You know, after the game, Nathan, I said it, you know, it's a difficult day to throw. It's a difficult day to throw going this way or this way. Played pretty good. Did he miss a couple throws? Sure, but he made some throws. He managed to migrate around a little bit with, you know, a few changes up front in the offensive line. His decision-making, other than the play at the end where, you know, I would have liked for him to throw it away, and he didn't really want to take that risk based on what it was, he was good. So, you know, he played pretty good. Made a lot of throws on third downs. Ran the ball at times good.
A lot of things can go wrong on that quarterback throwback, which has kind of been a signature trick play for your offenses over the years. That's the first time those guys had run that. That was pretty smooth for Tylen and Taylor, everybody.
You know, the good news is, and the bad news is, when you watch it during the week, they either pick it up and it works good the 4 to 6 times you practice it, or it doesn't look good. And here's what I've learned. If it doesn't look good, you better get rid of it. If it looks good from the start, then they naturally have the savvy to execute the play. And it looked good every day. Every time we practice, it looked good.
You mentioned leadership earlier. Have you seen Taylor take more of a vocal leadership role? He's always quiet with us.
He's not going to talk. He's been leading by toughness and example and playing better, yes. But, you know, you can't make somebody different. I don't know if you're a talker or what is it, introvert and extrovert? Is that correct? Whatever one, extrovert, yeah. Whatever one you are, you can't change. Well, he's what he is. But he has been leading by toughness and example in his play, yes. But he's not going to go in there and hit guys' heads and, and bang his head on a chalkboard and bloody his forehead. He's not going to do that.
Going back to the trick play, how often do you go to install a play like that and you realize a couple times in this isn't going to work?
Every week. We put different things in every week, and it was like, ugh, that's terrible. You got to get rid of it. But we always try to come up with little things. But the things that, for us, I don't know about other people, trick plays on special teams and in offense, they have to be base versus certain looks because you can't practice them against everything. Defenses are so multiple nowadays, and special teams are so multiple that if you just go to scheme at a bunch of stuff, you spend all that time on it, and they line up different than what they did, you just throw all that in your pocket, you wasted time. So there's a real fine line there in how you can do things like that.
Mike, what do you think is the biggest reason that your teams have struggled against OU throughout the years?
I think they're good. Have you watched them play? Everybody struggled against them. They're a good team. I think that's a bigger factor.
It's only been a few games since they replaced the defensive coordinator, so it's hard to pick up tendencies necessarily. But have you seen any differences in their approach, maybe a little more aggressive or anything like that for the OU defense?
Looked to be simpler from the outside looking into me. I mean, same guys though. They're physical up front. Their linebackers are really fast. But looks to me like there's fewer schemes, more base alignment. Looks like, to a certain extent, stay back, keep everybody in front of us, and catch us if you can on offense. That's what it looks like to me.
Talk about Brailford and what he's done to this defense this season.
He's been great. He's been active. Brailford's been a good leader. He doesn't talk a lot, but he will do a little bit of it. But he's been good. He's a good player and make plays. And he draws quite a bit of attention, which he should. That's why I wish, to a certain extent you had, one more like forceful guy in there, because then it's harder to say, okay, let's make sure we know where that guy's at. But he's been good for us.
You mentioned how Brailford doesn't talk a lot, and you said Cornelius doesn't either. Who besides Darian really are some of the most vocal leaders on the team?
We don't have many guys that do a lot of that. It's a relatively, Justice Hill, does he talk for y'all?
No.
Okay, so, I think sometimes you guys just think I make stuff up, but I told you early in the year we don't have a lot of those guys that talk. Tyron Johnson does a pretty good job of it. He'll do some of it. Justice doesn't talk much. JD's doing a better job. JD's doing a nice job. He's got a little bit of it to him. Justice, was that the bad guy or what?
Somebody was trying to get us a box lunch.
Y'all better leave her food alone. So anyway, Justice is doing a good job. There's others, I just can't think of them right now. But I don't want to stress too much on that versus if we would be more disciplined in our play and not get in our own way, or I should say get out of our way, we'd be a lot better off.
You mentioned the skill players on offense. Can it be an offensive lineman that can be vocal, like a Crabtree last year kind of was before he got injured?
You're saying, is there one?
As a vocal leader, can there be?
Sure, yeah. 72 does a good job. He does a pretty good job with it. 75 doesn't talk. We've played musical chairs at the tackle spots, and Tevin doesn't talk. So those guys are just kind of quiet guys. They go about their job, and it's not like you have a bunch of those guys. We've not had just lots of guys on both sides of the ball that have done it, but Trey Flowers carried guys. Chad Whitener carried us for a few years. Mason that's what he did, You only need a couple, but it's just kind of been one of those years where we got a lot of guys that don't really talk a lot, So.
Best you ever had? Who's the best you ever had in that regard? Was Pettigrew that kind of guy? He was, right? I'm talking about who's the best guy you ever had in regard to policing and setting things straight and being vocal. I always thought Pettigrew seemed that way.
Well, Pettigrew was the absolute best. Pettigrew's the one that started this program. I've told you all that story. I don't want to waste y'all's time on that story. Pettigrew would be the guy because I didn't have to do anything. He did it. I'm glad you brought him up because I would have forgot him. That's a long time ago. But Pettigrew enforced it. He enforced everything. He took care of it all. He was old school. Yeah.
Mike, do you, I know it's different for every kid, but is there a time frame that you see a kid step up and the light comes on and they figure it out? Is it in the off season, or do you see that some during the season?
Any particular kid? Any particular position you're talking about?
No, not really. We've been kind of talking about leadership, and I'm just wondering, does that happen more in the off season, or does it happen during the season?
Both. Their off season is so difficult that you'll see guys step up and do that. And then sometimes you'll see it during the season. It would be unfair for me to say it was one or the other. It's both. You've seen it. And like somebody mentioned Tylen, he's getting there now because he feels good about what he's doing, and so he's starting to do that.
You were able to put in a few freshmen who hadn't played before, and on Saturday going forward, anyone who hasn't played yet is guaranteed to register. Do you feel like now you have some more flexibility in these final few games?
Well, we got a lot of flexibility, but we don't really, at this point, have anybody that we think that could, give us a better chance to have success with where we're at. Fortunately, we've stayed pretty healthy, so we hadn't had to make any of those major changes in the last few games.
You mentioned short-term, long-term decisions. If you get the opportunity, and you may not. These all may be slobber knocker games, the last three. Is there a list of guys who like to get his feet wet or anything like that, or do you even think that way?
I mean, we're just not in that position right now. Maybe that's something we rethink next year as far as, if early in the year, if you're fortunate enough and you're ahead, put in freshmen more so than now. But there's just so much that goes into it. Like, I'll give you an example. I didn't know we were going to have such a rash of injuries or at the wideout spot, and then when you throw McCleskey leaving and then the injuries we had. If we would have known that, we'd have probably played somebody earlier to get somebody ready later. But we didn't think that would happen. It's just really hard to predict when that's going to happen. And then offensive linemen in most cases aren't ready. They're not ready in the first and second game of the year to go out there. And people say, well, just let them go get their feet wet. Well, that's all real good when you're trying to throw a pass and there's three people coming and hitting you. That guy's getting worse than getting his feet wet. You got to be able to protect those backs and protect the quarterbacks too. So there's just a lot that goes into it.
Mike, that targeting call in Tylen in the first half of last week's game, it's the second time it's happened to him this year. They were both overturned, but does that kind of concern you, thinking that it's happened twice and that another one like that and he could be thrown out of the game?
Yes. Yeah. We talked about it on the headphones. He's doing it the right way. He's getting below and he's dropping his shoulder and he's really good at it. But I would like it to be about 12 inches lower down here, and then I don't have to worry about it because we can't afford to lose him for a game. And they've been clean. They've been good. It was officiated properly. It looked like it could potentially be a targeting. They flagged it. They reviewed it. It wasn't. They said, you're all good. But it does make us nervous, yes.
You talked about how much you guys had practiced that with all the receivers, and you guys have been known as a great blocking team. Have you talked with maybe like a coordinator of officials or something about what you guys have to do to make sure that it's not called a targeting?
We've done all that. We do all that, and we have a good idea. But here's where you have an issue is that he's so close that when he's coming in to hit that guy, like this, if that guy were to see him, like if it was you, and you were to see a collision, what's the first thing you do naturally? You protect yourself, right? I mean, you're not going to do this. You're gonna flinch and protect yourself. If that were to happen, it could actually be contact, and then he would be out. And so that's why we have to be really careful with it, because fortunately they have not seen him coming yet. And if they do and they react and start to move and it gets down, because that's what happens when you're tackling a ball carrier. You're going to tackle him, then he lowers his head, and you tackle him in a down position, and if you hit him, they're going to penalize you, even though that he dropped his level. You're still going to lose. That's what can happen with Tylen's. He's got to be careful. But it's hard to coach. It's like you're telling defensive ends to get to the quarterback, get to the quarterback, get to the quarterback. They're fighting to get there, and then they fall on their feet and they flag you. I mean, what do? versus like last week with Trey, he put his hands up in his face. You can stop that. We don't have to do that. So there's just different ways to handle all those areas.
2014, you guys went into Norman on kind of a down year, getting a win for bowl eligibility. Do you see any comparisons with this year's Bedlam matchup?
Gosh, I mean, maybe not for them. I don't know. I can't even remember what their record was in. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I would say that they're a different team now than they were then. I mean, just looking, I don't know. But one thing, I get asked that a lot, but I don't make any comparisons. This is a completely different team than then, and to make comparisons is unfair because it's just, I mean, you could probably ask most of them about it, and they wouldn't even be able to tell you. So, well, I'll give you all a good example, and I know I got to go because I got to do my TV show. Let me make sure I get this right. Y'all like this. Okay, you know, you were asking about the penalties and how to handle it. Somebody was. What do? You got off on trash and dirty clothes in the bathroom, right? Okay, so when I started my talk to the team Sunday night on about you were 100 yards in penalties, you're up by 10, 8 minutes left, that deal, and then you played against Texas and you did this and all that, and so I said, we're struggling with discipline, things we talk about all the time. And so I used James Franklin, who's a friend of mine that I coached at Maryland with. And I said, okay, you guys saw a month ago when Penn State played, I think it was Ohio State, and they lost by 1 point. And I just happened to be watching that night on TV. And he said, we're showing up at meetings on time. I don't want anybody a minute late. I want you wearing the right stuff. I don't want any missed assignments. I don't want any of this. All these different things. He said, whatever it is, something's causing us to lose to them by 1 point 2 years in a row. I think that's what he said, right? And I said, I'm using that as an example with what we have to do to minimize undisciplined plays. And I said, you guys know what I'm talking about. You saw it, right? Did anybody see it? Nobody even saw it. That was I mean, it was on SportsCenter. They don't even see that stuff. That's an example of the world they live in. I thought I had this great thing set up. Not one person in there said they saw it. And that's the world they live in. They have their phones and they don't even pay attention to other stuff. And so I said, well, that's out the window. Let me tell you what our plan is. But they didn't go for it. Nobody in there even said they saw the dang interview. So that just proves to you how different world that they live in.
You even mentioned to your players voting tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you did?
Yeah, 2 months ago, we made every one of them sign up and be eligible to vote. I don't care if you vote or not. That's your choice. You need to vote if you want to live in this country. But you need to go sign up, and you need to make yourself eligible to vote. But from that point on, they're on their own. Good? All right, let's go, girl.